In this episode, Jackrabbit Homesteads, Kim Stringfellow's study of the cultural legacy of the Small Tract Act in Southern California's Morongo Basin.
It's kind of the edge of civilization, and nobody's felt particularly motivated to change it. So it's kind of stuck in time.
Danny Heller's paintings of iconic mid-century modern architecture in Palm Springs.
One thing that really blew me away was how well preserved all those homes are. In a ways, it was like a mid-century Disneyland for me.
The preservation efforts to maintain the historic Watts Towers built by Simon Rodia.
I was even more amazed that it was done without any drawings, any design, without scaffolding, without power tools.
The prefabricated modular houses of architects Wexler and Harrison in Palm Springs.
They were treating it in some of the conversations and some of the articles so forth, like you're buying a work of art, a Wexler, which is very flattering.
CalEarth, an organization teaching super Adobe construction techniques as an alternative to suburban sprawl.
We build arches, we build circles, we build domes, we build vaults. And these are all based on the same cooperative relationship with gravity, pulling your building together over time.
Next, on Artbound.
My name is Kim Stringfellow. I'm an artist educator. When I decided to document photographically these Jackrabbit homesteads, I made it a point to only photograph the abandoned cabins. You have to understand that these are, way out in the desert. Between each cabin, there's quite a distance. And I would usually park and walk to several cabins, maybe walking about 10 miles. In my article, my idea was to bring together a past history and the current history of the Jackrabbit homesteads, the history of the Small Tract Act, and bring this into how they are used today through this creative community. It was really great working with Artbound to develop this video, to actually see the voices, see these places, see the works, see the architecture firsthand. I think is a really great thing.
You have a tie to the place where you live. You appreciate that the sun shines and dries your bricks.
There's this very romantic idea about being in this very small structure, very open to the elements. There's a sense of space here that's incredible. You can see for miles here, and there's so many different subtle changes within the landscape. It's very meditative.
You either love it or you hate it. There's no two ways about it. This part of San Bernardino County basically was very sparsely populated. Nobody really settled this area until after World War I. There was a lot of returning veterans who had lung disorders. Physician James B. Lucky suggested to many of his patients that they seek a cure in the warm, dry air of the desert. And he thought that this area was pretty good, particularly 29 Palms, because there was an oasis here for a source of water. So many of the veterans did come out here actually seeking a cure.
I've been working on a project on Jackrabbit homesteading since about 2005. We're out here in Wonder Valley. It's one of the areas that has probably the most homesteads in the Mojave area.
Wonder Valley is not actually a place in any kind of real designation, so it is more a state of mind. It began to gain some form in around the late 40s, 50s, 60s, when the Small Tract Homestead Act went into effect, and little homesteads began springing up throughout this area and a lot of areas of the Morongo Basin and all the way into Nevada and Arizona and the low desert.
This was one of the last of the Homestead Acts that allowed people to get public land from the federal government if they were able to lease out a property, improve it up by building a small structure, and they could then dispose of it, sell it, give it to heirs.
Here in Wonder Valley, the community of homesteads has stayed particularly intact because it's kind of the edge of civilization and nobody's felt particularly motivated or that there was sufficient profit to change it. So it's kind of stuck in time.
Deserts were not the sort of place that people really, really wanted. It was obviously way, way, way too hot or way too cold. So for people to come and homestead out here was indeed rather odd.
The interest in the Western heritage and this sort of very romanticized idea of the Western landscape. That was huge during the 40s and the 50s and even into the 60s. So this is a big part of our cultural heritage, and I think that kind of a romantic idea about place and wanting to be part of that and wanting to project yourself into this particular kind of landscape was really attractive for a lot of people. There's something about them, they're located in this kind of hinterland. There's a certain kind of aesthetic out in the desert. It's this rustic bohemia that is prevalent throughout this area.
This homestead cabin behind me is mine. I use it as my art studio, and it's a really classic example of the kinds of homesteads that were built. And they would go up in the space of a day. They were practically like package homes.
People came out here with a romantic idea of what this was going to be like. And some of those communities are still established today. But a lot of these properties were left to just slowly degrade into the desert and melt back into this really desolate landscape.
The ones that stayed were obviously people that had some kind of respect for the land and the coyotes and the scorpions and all the other normal creatures of the desert, and it has a beauty all of its own.
There's always been a wonderful, unpredictable mix of folks here. Going all the way back to the original homesteaders who came out, they were very excited, partly at the freedom of being able to create their dream and not have control over them. That and some sort of a relationship with this desert environment, even if it's nothing more than the freedom and the space and the opportunity to be however they want to be.
My name is Drew Mackey. I'm an arts writer, a pop culture writer, and a news editor. I actually knew Danny back in college. We worked together very casually for a few years at the college paper, and then I ran into him again at a gallery show here in LA. Danny Heller's process is awesome. He gets to drive out to Palm Springs, drive around and look at nice houses, take pictures of them, sometimes contact the owners and ask if he can stay inside the house and paint on premises. The paintings themselves were interesting to me because it's this beautiful Southern California landscape that a lot of people would have good associations with. But at the same time, they're kind of sad because they're depicting an era that came and went. The absence of any sentient life in those paintings kind of hints at that in a way that doesn't get you until later. It's almost like it's a memorial to that lifestyle, like a tribute to something that we're not actually going to be able to experience ourselves.
I was born and raised in Southern California, in Los Angeles. That led to my discovery of mid-century architecture and just had this great curiosity for all that stuff. That eventually led me to Palm Springs, which is pretty much the mecca of mid-century architecture.
I came out here when Palm Springs was the redheaded stepchild of the desert. Nobody really cared. You could have bought every house on the street, and it was cheap because nothing had been renovated or redone. Everything needed work. I drove into this neighborhood and I was just like stunned because it was like a time warp of a neighborhood. And I go, this is exactly what I want. I joined the Palm Springs Modern Committee very early on. I'm a founding board member of it. And I got some renderings of what all these houses originally looked like. So I wanted to restore it back to its original look. And photographs that Julia Schulman took in color of the house right after they were built really inspired me to do it because I saw how beautiful they were. I guess I'm sort of an originalist. I love to reproduce or recreate or bring back how things were when they were first done. If you change things, then you've wiped away history. So if you can look at what was there and replicate it, you're preserving it for future generations and you're creating something that's real and authentic and has value. There's an awareness brewing and happening where people are looking for the authentic, not the whitewashed, viewed through rose-colored glasses version of the 50s. This is the original steel door. I mean, these are not even aluminum, these are original steel, so these are going to be preserved because you can't get them anymore. William Kreisel is delighted that I'm working on another one because it just helps to really solidify his legacy, I think. Modernism is a very precise architecture. It has to be kept pristine, and so making them back to how they were, it shows off his art, essentially, and so that's what I want to do.
One thing that really blew me away was how well preserved all those homes are. In a ways, it was like a mid-century Disneyland for me. I was able to drive around and just be inspired and take lots of photos, and it had such an impact on me that for the last few years, I've pretty much focused on Palm Springs paintings. It embodies that Southern California spirit, the sunshine, the palm trees, the laid-back vibe, bright colors, classic cars. It's iconic, and it's almost a time capsule, not just because of the mid-century architecture, but because of that ideal that I think people still chase.
Stu Williams, the original architect for this house, his mission or idea about how a house should be built is simply that a house should look as if it grew out of the ground rather than looking like it fell out of the sky. And I think the Idris house embodies that more than any house I've ever seen.
I had a very full life in the Bay Area. I was ultimately the mayor for the city of Sausalito and loved my life there, but I needed a break, and my escape, my runaway, was here to Palm Springs. And I found myself sitting in a plane heading north and looking out the window and looking back and not wanting to leave. And so, without a lot of thought and absolutely no regret, one day I picked up and moved here full time. Palm Springs Modern Committee was formed just a few years before I moved here, and I got involved in it very quickly. And it's a preservation organization that simply focuses on modern design. I always supported them, and ultimately I'm now vice president of ModCom. I'm also a planning commissioner here in Palm Springs, so I guess you could say I'm very, very involved. I recently took on a $1.5 million fundraising campaign for our local art museum, the Palm Springs Art Museum, because we're about to open an architecture and design museum here in Palm Springs, the first of its kind in the country to have an architecture and design museum freestanding downtown in a vintage building owned by an art museum.
Most people walk in and they get thrown back to sort of the era of Mad Men. Being completed in 1960, it very much speaks to that era. And it's going to go right back to that. We still have these great old swinging panels, these beautiful metal panels. Notice this beautiful old handrail, all aluminum, beautifully designed. I always refer to this building as a little jewel box because it looks almost like a little glass box sitting on a pedestal from the outside. Everybody loves this building, and when it's lit up at night, it's just magic.
One of the most amazing things that's going on in Palm Springs right now is because of all our work in preservation and sort of the love that we're bestowing on the city in terms of preserving its past and carefully molding its development and future, we've become a true arts and cultural center. People are coming in droves. This is the place, once again, like in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, that people want to come, hang out at pools, have a great time, live the Frank Sinatra martini lifestyle. And it's all here and it's never changed. We probably double our population every weekend who want to live that martini lifestyle that we get to live every day.
There's a bit of nostalgia to my work, but it's just escapism. I almost think of the paintings as stages. I'm setting a stage. This is a place, this is a landscape that people can embody, and the viewer will bring whatever they want to the painting. It almost gives people access to this vacation world of Palm Springs.
We're all very proud of achieving the light speed that allows us to come here and participate in this, because being from the Midwest, you know, we saw it in magazines, in the Schulman books, we saw it in the movies, and it really was a dream. And then to find out that you can actually come out here and be in that movie, you know, sort of the Hollywood, California lifestyle. Now we call it preservation through neglect, you know. There was 20 years where nobody came out here, and all these places are still here, and so we're able to participate in that and bring them all back. And then, of course, in Palm Springs, the thing that's different is it's always warm. We can stand around in our bare feet, and we can drink all the time. Lots of drinking in this town. You know, I didn't start drinking liquor until I was 50. There's a lot of partying going on out here, you know. And you're only a couple blocks away, so it doesn't matter what kind of shape you're in, you can make it home. And everybody knows you. You know, they recognize your car, they go, oh yeah, I know where he lives. I'll get him home. It's a fun town.
It's exactly on the south-north axis, so we get these perfect sunrises and perfect sunsets, and you get to watch the migration of the sun through the year. And there's this constant play of light, shadow, mountains, and sky.
With any community or any area that's considered iconic, you can get maybe a little bit cliche. 27-foot tall Marilyn came to town, and people are coming from all over the country to see Marilyn, standing in the iconic stance with her dress blowing up. Of course, we're a little bit cliche. People crave history. They crave character. They crave a little bit of trouble. Hollywood came to Palm Springs to be bad. This is where they could be bad, and they could hide it. This is where somebody like Liberace flourished, and nobody cared. Nobody toned anything down in Palm Springs.
It's still that way. People still come from all over the country to have a naked frolic in the pool under the moonlight if they like, or to hang out in restaurants and not be bothered. Frank Sinatra was in the phone book, for Christ's sake.
Oh my God, look, we fell into a magic place. This happens a lot here. Where's the bar? Hey, you.
How are you?
What is this, the original Fontanelle?
This is what helped us and informed us on what to do.
The Fontanelle is sparkling.
Once you're in this sanctuary, you really have no idea what year it is. There's nothing to inform you about that.
This is the Palm Springs promise. When you look back, the sun's gone down, the mountains are glowing. It's just amazing.
My paintings are doing well. I think, fortunately, I've always been interested in painting things that people gravitate towards. I've been able to develop a pretty good collector clientele down there, as well as up here. I think there's a lot of people that love Palm Springs that go there as often as they can, but you know, maybe they can't afford that vacation home down there. So they do want to have a bit of Palm Springs with them up here in Los Angeles. Palm trees and blue swimming pools with pink inner tubes. Classic architecture and sun reflecting off of the chrome of a beautiful Cadillac. It is sort of this American ideal, and it gives people, I think, a sense of comfort. So that's something that I think I do capture in my work, whether it's conscious or not, and I think that's something that a lot of my collectors have gravitated towards.
My name is Ellen Caldwell, and I'm an art historian and an arts writer. I was reading the LA Times and I read Angel Jennings' article on the towers and the restoration efforts. I was really interested in the part when she said that they were learning that the towers were acting almost like a living organism and kind of breathing and moving with the sun and kind of bowing towards the sun just moved me. It felt kind of magical. And if you've been to the towers, then you know that there is kind of a sense of magic there. Simon Rodias started building them in his backyard in 1921. And at some point around 1955, something happened. He left and deeded his house to a neighbor and never looked back. The city eventually stepped in and they were thinking of tearing down the towers. There kind of became a Watts Towers coalition that wanted to stand up for the towers to keep them and preserve them. So someone had come up with a weight-bearing test that would take place, and the towers prevailed. So the city took over, then they were working on conservation efforts, but it seems that they didn't quite have the money and the resources needed to study the towers and to actually see what repairs were working and what weren't, and then why they weren't working. And they really wanted a guide that would help with conservation efforts now, but also for the future. They ended up going to LACMA, and LACMA invested a large sum of money and a team into helping to study the towers and really look at it from a conservationist point of view.
To the outer edge of the city of Los Angeles, a scattered collection of shacks, trailers, and weather-beaten bungalows. Flat and impoverished, it is the last place on earth to look for the extraordinary or for the shadow of greatness. The people of the town have long wondered about Simon Rodilla. Simon Rodilla, tile setter by trade, Italian-born, American for half a century, builder of defiant towers.
If you really stand in it, it'll start to move sometimes. You go out there, it gives you the impression that it's moving, and you can feel the energy of Simon and what he really wanted. He wanted to be on that ship to go back to Sereno and Rivatoli up there in those mountains where he came from. He would love to have gone back to see his family and to be a part of that. But so he built something, you know, out of his imagination, out of his mind, out of his soul. He built something that would take him back if that were possible. Some see the Watts Towers as more important to the United States of America than the Statue of Liberty. She was built by a Frenchman and she was floated in. The Watts Towers were built by one single immigrant, Salvador Rodias. A lot of people think that the Watts Towers were built by a black man. They never noticed what color Simon was. People thought he was a little eccentric and a little crazy, but what the heck, you know, who isn't? But he was a phenomenal man who needed to express himself and needed to feel safe in expressing himself. What he represents is what a little man can do with a desire to build, to do something big. And he did something big. And when he finished, he gave the property and the deed to a neighbor, and he walked away. My name is Rosie Lee Hooks. I'm director of the campus, which includes the Watts Towers Art Center, the Charles Mingus Youth Art Center, the Watts Towers. We are the guardian of the Watts Towers and the tour program and museum education. The Watts Towers are 92 years old and we are 52 years old, so we really look at our heritage in a very special kind of way. We're known internationally, but in LA, you know, the only thing you hear about Watts is who got shot and what gang is on doing this, that, and the other. We're kind of pushed in a corner with that kind of image, but we're also continuing to say we are more than that. We are much more than that. We are very rich. Look at what we do. Look at our culture. Look who's associated to us. And once you come here, we've got you.
In 1984, when I first came here, I was really amazed that one man could have that dedication and stamina and vision to build something like that without any technical help, without scaffolding, without power tools. And I was even more amazed that it was done without any drawings, any design, and man whom some would have called uneducated had such an intuitive feeling for engineering and for structures that he built something like that that actually withstands all the earthquakes that it has endured, the wind, the heat, and so on. It certainly shows damage, but which monument does not after that period of time? The problem with the old repair is that the repair materials could not respond to the movement of the cracks and therefore failed. So we are looking at a material that's used routinely in the cement industry for expansion joint filling. They can expand 100% and be compressed 50%, so they can accommodate quite a bit of movement. The most critical part with them is proper installation. I myself have 40 years of experience in the field of conservation as a scientist and have worked in architectural conservation since the second half of the 70s. I was in charge of the restoration of the tomb of Queen Nefertari, environmental studies on the Great Sphinx in Giza, and similar projects. As far as I'm concerned, the Watts Towers is probably the most difficult project of my career. In the beginning, I don't even have a notepad. I have a camera, and that's all I take with me, and a magnifying glass, and maybe binoculars in a site like this. And I just walk the site and try to understand it. I try to understand what may be going on. It's like doing when the doctor does a general physical. He looks at your blood pressure, he looks at this, at that, and the other thing, and then tries to form an image about what is or is not wrong with you. Similar, you do it with a monument like that. You don't jump into it prematurely. It leads to mistakes. It's a multifaceted treatment we are now developing. We want to treat it respectful as a work of art, but at the same time it is a piece of architecture for which we have a certain way of dealing with architecture. There are things we can do to architecture that we cannot do to art. Being a big outdoor monument, we cannot deal with it like with a museum object. And for museum objects, we have our own ways of dealing with and our own ethics. We have to find not only technical solutions, which is challenging in itself, we have to find that middle way between architecture and work of art in how we treat it. Because we not only want our repairs to last long, we also want them to look good. So we have to do things that we would not do to an artwork, simply to assure the safety of the monument for humans visiting it. And that makes it very complicated. The way they are constructed, when you look at it, they have an interior steel element, and then this is wrapped with wire mesh. Then Bodia put on top of it a cement mortar, cement plaster, and while the cement was still wet, he embedded the decorative elements which in this case are tiles. It can be ceramics, it can be seashells, it can be glass, bottle glass, window glass, security glass. You find everything, found objects, broken objects. He pilfered the steel wherever he could get it. Where he did not do shortcuts was the cement. Rhodia, in terms of his cement, was very consistent. People ask him, why don't you hire somebody or get somebody in? And quality control, according to his comment, was they don't know how to handle it. So he was very proud of his ability. The problem he faced, however, is as the towers grew taller, he was mixing the cement in a steel bucket and he was carrying it on his shoulder. And as he was climbing up, the cement was drying out. Now, while Rhodia still was working, he was doing restoration. So he had cracks forming, he had problems, and he restored completed parts of the towers while he was still building in other parts. The towers are structurally stable. We are working with engineers and have verified that. But in the long run, if nothing is done about them, they may actually ultimately jeopardize the stability of the towers.
We needed to come up with a viable way of taking care of the towers, but that decreased our dependency on the general fund. In recent years, we've been working with the Los Angeles County Museum of Art to preserve the towers, to get a better understanding of just what the scientific principles are behind repairing the towers, curatorial knowledge, conservation knowledge. So this has been just a real strategic alliance of two institutions that have come together not only to preserve the towers, but to market them more effectively, encourage other people to come here.
LACMA is actually in a good position to undertake a project like this because it has a scientific laboratory dedicated to the study of deterioration and restoration of works of art. We have a whole slate of analytical equipment and of testing equipment like X-radiography, infrared reflectometry, and so on that allows us to analyze materials, test their performance, etc. One major concern is we are constantly losing decorative elements. The problem is that the cement and the ornaments heat up differentially. The cement gets hotter than the glass and the ceramic. So the first task we had was to determine why did the past repairs not work. And in the past, people worked from one assumption, and that is that the cracks are caused by the interior steel corroding. And we know that from commercial buildings and residential concrete buildings that corroding steel expands and can cause cement to crack. But other studies have proposed other causes for the crack formation. First of all, the towers are heavy. The heaviest towers is 32,000 pounds. And the towers are flexible, they are moving. Being in Los Angeles, every spring we have Santa Ana season, where we have these strong winds coming from the north. The acceleration is from the wind event on the towers is equivalent to a moderate earthquake. And as you walk around, you see the same phenomenon over and over again. Like here you see multiple repairs of the same crack. And there's an old saying, namely that a building or a structure develops cracks where it needs them. So the simplest way of determining if a crack is active and changing dimensions actively or not is to put a plaster bridge over it. And this bridge here actually broke within a week or two. So we installed crack monitors, we installed thermocouples. What we found is that there's a daily movement. As the sun comes up and the surface heats up, the cracks are closing. And as the sun goes down and the surface cools down, the cracks are opening. Even worse, the whole towers move. As the sun comes up, they start bending away from the sun. And then as the sun moves around, they bend always away from the sun. And then as the sun goes down, they go back to their original position. So our task basically now is to find repairs that can withstand the thermal movement, the wind-caused movement, and the movement caused by minor earthquakes or moderate earthquakes. The second task is to keep the water away from the steel. So we have to close the cracks so that water cannot go through. And there are also hairline cracks which we have to treat. My stated goal is that I want to have a treatment that does not require major interventions more frequently than every 20 years. If that is done, then I see no reason why in 100 years or 150 years the tower should not still stand proud there, short of the 10.0 earthquake or whatever that is out of our control. Whenever there are people out there who love something, it's worth preserving. We can interpret a lot of things into a monument, but to me it certainly looks like a three-mast ship, especially with the connection between the east tower and the center tower that looks like some sort of rigging. I think it must have been nuts. I don't know how you can spend every 3 minutes for over 30 years, for 34 years, building that thing. But at the same time, all the great ones had some problems. But I admire what he was able to accomplish. I would never have the staying power to do that.
The towers mean to me personally survival. It means strength. It means creativity. It means bringing together people who would not normally be together. I think our community is very proud of the Watts Towers, also because we are the heartbeat of Watts. You can, if you just be real still for a moment, you can feel that heartbeat. Boom, 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 boom. You feel it?
I'm Patrick McGrew. I've been a practicing architect for 40 years. But over the years, my practice or my interest kind of evolved into architectural history. I thought the steel houses piece that I wrote for Artbound would resonate with an audience because it's the perfect combination of history, of mid-century, and what's happening today. The idea when you guys said we're going to do the video of using your animation department was just, it was just brilliant because we've seen those images for years as static images, but the fact that you basically assembled the house through animation was just mind-blowing. Then you throw in Don Wexler, who is becoming, I kid around, I always say he's the architectural Betty White of Palm Springs, because he just keeps going. And to see a first-person experience with Don Wexler talking about the steel houses is kind of like, talking to Frank Lloyd Wright about the Roby House. I mean, it was really a compelling and charming video, in my view.
Palm Springs has become the mecca of mid-century architecture. They come from all over the world to see it. It's a way of life and it's a lifestyle. When I built my own home in '55, it was all wood house, and I found out that wood isn't the best thing in the world for the desert. When I had the opportunity to work with metal, I thought it was great for the desert because I really believe the three materials that are dominant in the desert are steel, glass, and concrete. We were hoping that this house would be something like the first Ford, that it caught on and people wanted things like this. We had designed what we called a lumberyard of steel. We designed different windows and different doors and different wall elevations and so forth, and set it up where a person could come out and pick up their plan and pick out what they want from this model. Rather than trying to do an all-factory prefab, we'd work on the site, whatever is the least expensive, and do the buildings in the factory. So we are literally a factory fabricated, site erected building. We did the concrete work on the site and the underground plumbing and electrical and so forth. And we did the slab using a template that kept everything precise and bolts exactly where they had to go. So it took no time at all. And in these houses, we designed a core that contained the kitchen, the 2 bathrooms, and the circulation system within the house. And that was all one structure when it came out from the factory. And on each side of the core, we have the wing that's open. And you could have the living room here or the dining room here. You could do 1, 2, or 3 bedroom within the periphery of the building itself. That's all part of wanting to relate the indoors to the outdoors and keeping it as open as possible. In designing the buildings, we naturally wanted to take advantage of the elements and work with them. We went to north-south orientation with 6-foot overhangs where we could block out the summer sun by the height of the overhang and let in the winter sun because the sun was much lower. So that was an integral part of all our design. We wanted a little bit of variety, and we developed 3 different roof systems. One, they call it the bent system. It's a series of slopes, and everybody refers to it as folded plates. We just wanted to do the most livable house we could within the design criteria, keeping it as open as possible. I came out here and went in, it was like a time warp. I mean, it was exactly the way it was originally. When the renovation came about, after Jim Moore and Jim Esserman did that, they were treating it in some of the conversations and some of the articles and so forth, like you're buying a work of art, a Wexler, which is very flattering.
I first became familiar with CalEarth when I met Houman Falzi. I was really excited about this idea of sustainable architecture that's based on these very ancient ideas of structures, domestic structures. They're using essentially dirt from the surrounding area. When they have these apprentices come in, they really stress that this isn't dirt, this is earth. We're made of the same materials, this is all part of us. And to respect this earth. And when you put that kind of emphasis into this type of design, it makes for a better environment to live in. They're really thinking about sustainability. I think they're thinking far into the future when resources, have been depleted, and how to also make a structure that is very aesthetically pleasing. These are beautiful, beautiful buildings. They look very organic. The way that they're built, the structure is not continuously fighting to pull itself apart. It's really sort of coming into itself. I keep referencing the beehive and this idea of a communal type of built environment, because to do these, you really need a group of people to help you put these together. It's almost like a barn raising, because you have to fill these bags, you have to create these round structures that lead into domes. You need a group of people to help, and so it helps to build community as they're being built.
Originally, when my father came to this empty plot of land, he was trying to figure out what kind of a place he can start to experiment and build structures that would help humanity and nature. They had no money or anything like that, so they said, what can we do that would be really inexpensive? Well, let's dig a hole.
My dad was so passionate about helping people, and he believed that architecture was most meaningful if people were able to build themselves their own home with nothing but the earth under their feet. This was his quest, this was his life's work that he spent every day out here in the desert, and sometimes people thought, what's this crazy man doing?
Nader Khalili, our founder, an Iranian-American architect, got a lot of his inspiration from classical Persian poetry, and especially the mystic poet Rumi, who says, "Earth turns to gold in the hands of the wise," and the timeless 4 elements of earth, air, water, fire. And we use the 4 elements really in all of our practices. Earth is our primary material, and varying the water content, we could get earth to behave in a lot of different ways. Fire can be seen as the sun. We position our buildings so the sun helps heat it when we need heat, and it also shades itself. And of course, air leads to the drying of the building. We insist at our institute that all of our students demonstrate respect to the medium by calling it earth and not just addressing it as dirt. In a nutshell, Nader would tell people to dig your pool and build your house. And we just teach people the basic skills of how to transform that earth from under your feet to over your head.
Originally, when my father first came here, this desert was completely empty. Then when the housing boom happened, we became surrounded by these cookie-cutter homes.
Our neighbors really don't know how to think of us or what to do with us. We get a lot of Star Wars. It looks like Tatooine, or it looks like Hobbit houses. People ask, "Oh, are you a commune?" We're like, "No, not really. We have an on-site residency program, but we're not a commune." They're like, "Are you a cult?" We're like, "Well, we're very passionate about what we do, but we're not a cult."
My father was a traditional architect and urban developer building skyscrapers, but he was very unhappy. So he left that work because he realized that it wasn't serving humanity or the earth. My father's passion was the fact that there's over 1 billion people in the world who have inadequate housing today. The solutions my dad came up with were how to build a home cheaply and be taught to anybody.
We build arches, we build circles, we build domes, we build vaults. And these are all based on the same cooperative relationship with gravity, where gravity is not slowly pulling your building apart, but it's consistently pulling your building together over time.
The reason you see all these prototypes at CalEarth is that we're presented with challenges in different environments. And so we continue to test until we come up with a solution.
It's actually amazingly flexible, so every time we go to another country to design something there, we always take into consideration local traditions, different kinds of waterproofing or plastering, so that we can accommodate the needs of the people who are going to live in the homes.
We've taken these structures and taught a lot of people, and they've been built all over the world, from Africa to Europe to Asia, dealing with humanitarian crisis and personal housing.
Our site in San Bernardino here at CalEarth, it's our mothership, it's our playground, it's where we get to experiment, and we don't know what it is that we're gonna find later with these exciting experiments that we're doing today. The first time I came here, it was very surreal. I'd heard about it and read about it and intellectually connected with it, but to actually tangibly be able to touch the buildings was a very moving experience. Nader firmly believed and would teach his students that hands are just as much tools for receiving information as our eyes or ears or noses, and the only way they start working is by putting them in the earth.
Working with earth it's really flexible material. You can really shape it into whatever you want. I can do everything. I can mix, I can lay bag, I can lay the barbed wire.
Traditional architects and builders sometimes are skeptical about the work that we do because it is so simple.
It's below a lot of engineers to bother themselves with dirt. We can take someone who might not even be comfortable changing a light bulb in their own house, but after 6 days of our intensive workshop, they can go somewhere and get some unskilled laborers and guide them together into building a safe shelter.
Hello everyone, welcome to CalEarth. Thank you so much for joining us out here.
We're very open to the community, and we're all about community. So we have an open house every month for people to come and visit and tell them all about it. You know, my father, he would come to my second grade class and he'd ask all the children to go to the board and say, draw me a house. And we'd all go and draw a square box with a triangle on it. Because of growing up like that, so much deforestation has happened. Because of these roofs, they require wood. So why not make it a circle? So what he taught the class was, let's all make rainbow houses. Let's all make arches.
We have people who come locally and they bring their friends and their neighbors to show them, and they see what we've been able to do with just the earth and some sandbags and barbed wire. They're truly, truly amazed at the possibilities.
After the housing boom here, there was a bust. And all of these homes that were going for very, very high prices dropped.
The type of development that was done is not very environmental or relevant to the desert context. None of the wood is local to this area, and the thin building envelope requires a lot of energy use. So having them be here right up against our fence really gives us the opportunity to draw vivid comparisons.
Well, my father's initial focus was always on building for the poor. This house here that we're in right now is called Earth One, and it's the kind of house that fulfills that suburban dream. 3-bedroom house with a 2-car garage and a fireplace and everything like that. Significantly less expensive than building a traditional structure. Also doesn't lead to deforestation, and literally you're going to build your house from what's underneath your feet.
The building envelope is more sustainable. It will cost you less to heat and cool and maintain over its lifetime.
We've been able to create plans that have passed the rigorous tests by the Building Department of California to allow these structures to become mainstream and available to everybody.
Everyone deserves to have a shelter over their head. They have the earth around them and they have the labor around them. They just don't have that information to get the earth to provide shelter for them. Every day we fire up the mixer and shovel some earth, and just slowly pursuing our quest, one shovel at a time,